For decades, a Los Angeles mansion held Ronnie James Dio's darkest secrets. When the metal legend died in 2010, his home was immediately sealed, every master tape, diary, and occult artifact locked away for nearly a decade. In 2019, they finally opened the vaults, and what they discovered inside left everyone stunned. From unreleased albums to ancient ritual objects to a shocking confession about Black Sabbath, this is the story of what really happened behind the closed doors of heavy metal's most mysterious icon. Ronald James Padavona was born on July 10, 1942, in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. When he was born, no one could have predicted that this son of Italian-American parents would transform into one of rock's most powerful vocalists. From the very start, he seemed destined for music. His father encouraged him to play trumpet and French horn at an early age, and young Ronnie showed remarkable talent. At just 5 years old, he was already performing, laying the foundation for a career that would span over 5 decades and change heavy metal forever. His childhood in Cortland, New York was far from the demonic imagery he would later embrace. Initially pursuing a career in pharmacology at the University at Buffalo, music remained his true passion. In the late 1950s, he adopted the name Dio, Italian for God, after Mafia member Johnny Dio. This early fascination with powerful figures and mythological imagery would define his career and create the mystique that made him a legend among metal fans worldwide. Documents found in Dio's estate revealed that his transition into the occult imagery that defined his career wasn't simply a marketing gimmick, but reflected a genuine fascination with mysticism and ancient religions. Personal journals described his extensive collection of books on comparative religion, medieval symbolism, and occult practices that he began assembling in the 1960s, long before such themes appeared in his music. Among his most treasured possessions was a rare 17th-century edition of The Lesser Key of Solomon, a grimoire on demonology. Handwritten notes in the margins showed decades of careful study. Even more surprising was correspondence between Dio and several respected academic figures, including a professor of religious studies at UCLA and an anthropologist specializing in ritual practices. These letters showed Dio engaging in serious intellectual discussions about symbolism, mythology, and the psychological function of ritual in human societies. Dio's career began in rockabilly bands like Ronnie and the Redcaps, before evolving toward heavy rock with bands like Elf. His big break came in 1975 when Deep Purple guitarist Ritchie Blackmore invited him to form Rainbow, a band that combined heavy metal with classical influences and fantastical lyrics. This collaboration showcased Dio's operatic vocal range and his talent for weaving mythological themes into hard rock, establishing him as a unique voice in the emerging heavy metal scene. The Rainbow period generated some of the most illuminating materials found in Dio's estate. Personal letters between Dio and Blackmore revealed a relationship far more complex than previously reported. In one letter from 1977, Dio wrote to Blackmore, "Your interest in the mystical seems more about appearance than substance. You adopt the trappings without seeking the meaning. I can't continue creating from that foundation." Blackmore's responses showed increasing frustration with what he perceived as Dio's self-righteousness. "You speak of meaning and depth as if you're the only one who understands," Blackmore wrote in a never-mailed draft letter. "This band was my vision, yet you act as if you're the sole guardian of artistic integrity. Perhaps Rainbow would be better served by someone less concerned with whether our use of medieval imagery meets some academic standard." While Rainbow brought Dio recognition, it was his 1979 recruitment into Black Sabbath that truly cemented his legendary status. Replacing Ozzy Osbourne was considered an impossible task, but Dio reinvented the band with albums like Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules. His introduction of the devil horns hand gesture, which he claimed was taught to him by his Italian grandmother as protection against the evil eye, became a universal symbol for heavy metal that transcended language barriers. Among the most shocking discoveries in Dio's estate were previously unheard demo recordings from his transition period between Rainbow and Black Sabbath. These raw tracks revealed that several songs, credited solely to Tony Iommi on Heaven and Hell, had been substantially developed by Dio before joining Sabbath. Accompanying letters showed Dio's frustration with the attribution, with one note stating, "Tony gets writing credit because that's the Sabbath way, but we both know where these songs really came from." A legal pad found in Dio's files contained a meticulous breakdown of his contributions to each track on Heaven and Hell, with percentages noting how much of each song he believed he had written. Next to Children of the Sea, he had written 85% mine, entire melody, all lyrics, chord progressions suggested to Tony. Similar notes appeared for Die Young, and even the title track, Heaven and Hell. Further evidence of behind-the-scenes tensions came from Dio's personal diary entries describing the fraught recording of Mob Rules. One particularly revealing entry noted, "Another day of fighting for recognition. Jeezer and Tony act like I'm still a replacement, not a band member. They take my ideas, then pretend they were theirs all along. Without me, they'd still be playing half-empty clubs, trying to recreate the Ozzy days." Most explosive were documentation of a secret meeting in late 1981 between Tony Iommi and Ozzy Osbourne's manager and future wife, Sharon Arden. According to a journal entry, Dio accidentally discovered evidence of this meeting and confronted Iommi, who admitted they had discussed the commercial viability of an Ozzy reunion even as Mob Rules was being recorded. "The betrayal is complete," Dio wrote. "I salvaged this band from obscurity and they're already planning my replacement." After leaving Black Sabbath in 1982, Dio formed his own band, simply called Dio. With albums like Holy Diver and The Last in Line, he established himself as a solo force in heavy metal. The band became known for elaborate stage shows, featuring dragons, lasers, and mystical imagery that brought Dio's lyrical themes to life. What few knew was the personal meaning behind these theatrical presentations. Perhaps most surprising was a hidden chamber discovered in Dio's home studio that had been sealed off from regular access. The room, described in Dio's journals as his sanctuary, contained an extensive collection of occult artifacts from around the world. Ancient Egyptian ankhs, medieval grimoires, ceremonial daggers from various traditions, and stones arranged in specific patterns. Most unexpected was a collection of correspondence between Dio and Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page, another musician known for his interest in the occult. These letters, spanning from 1979 to 2003, showed a deep intellectual friendship based on shared esoteric interests. In one letter, Page referenced their shared path through knowledge most would fear to seek, and discussed specific texts they had both studied. Financial records discovered in the estate painted a complex picture of Dio's business dealings. While publicly known as one of metal's good guys, private documents showed his shrewd and sometimes ruthless approach to band management. Contracts with various band members revealed that musicians in Dio's solo band were treated as hired employees rather than partners, with minimal royalty participation despite their creative contributions. A particularly controversial discovery was a series of letters between Dio and former bandmates who had been dismissed from his group. Several musicians had written emotional appeals about their financial struggles after being fired, with one noting that he was facing bankruptcy, while songs he had helped create continued generating significant income for Dio. The responses, when they existed, were businesslike rejections of any moral obligation beyond what contracts specified. Among the most poignant discoveries were Dio's private reflections on fame and legacy. Journal entries from the late 1990s, when metal had fallen from mainstream popularity, revealed his struggles with adapting to changing times. "The kids now want anger without poetry, volume without melody," he wrote in 1997. "I won't compromise what I create, but I wonder if anyone will still care in 10 years. Will everything I've built be forgotten?" This fear of obscurity seemed to motivate a surprising project found in his archives, an almost completed fantasy novel manuscript titled The Kingdom of the Crystal Dawn. Running over 700 pages, the hand-edited manuscript expanded on the world-building hinted at in his lyrics, creating an intricate fantasy realm complete with maps, character sketches, and elaborate mythologies. Notes indicated he had been working on this project secretly for over 15 years, hoping to establish a legacy beyond music. One of the most shocking revelations came from medical records and personal correspondence from the years before his stomach cancer diagnosis. These documents suggested that Dio had experienced symptoms for nearly 2 years before seeking treatment, initially dismissing them as routine digestive issues. Letters to his wife Wendy showed he had concealed the severity of his early symptoms, fearing that a medical diagnosis might force him to cancel tours and let down his fans. By the time Dio finally received his cancer diagnosis in 2009, the disease had progressed significantly. Private medical reports indicated that doctors believed earlier intervention might have dramatically improved his prognosis. Notes from his oncologist expressed frustration at the delayed treatment, while Dio's own journals showed his regret. "Maybe I could have beaten this if I hadn't been so stubborn, so dedicated to the road. The shows mattered more than the warning signs, and now I may have sacrificed everything for a few more concerts." The estate also contained extensive correspondence between Dio and younger metal musicians who sought his guidance. These letters revealed his role as a mentor to a generation of artists who grew up idolizing him. A lengthy correspondence with Metallica's James Hetfield showed Dio providing detailed vocal coaching through letters, addressing specific techniques for maintaining vocal health on long tours. Most surprising was a series of exchanges with Iron Maiden's Bruce Dickinson, revealing a much closer friendship than publicly acknowledged. The letters showed mutual respect between two of metal's most powerful vocalists, with detailed discussions of technique, lyrical approaches, and the challenge of balancing theatrical performance with technical precision. Perhaps the most unexpected discovery was evidence of Dio's extensive philanthropy, which he had kept almost entirely secret during his lifetime. Financial records showed substantial anonymous donations to children's charities, cancer research organizations, and music education programs in disadvantaged communities. Instructions to his financial managers explicitly prohibited any public acknowledgement of these contributions, with one note stating, "This is not for publicity. No one is to know the source of these funds." Bank statements revealed that Dio had been quietly funding a scholarship program for underprivileged youth interested in music education since 1985. Over the years, this program had put dozens of students through music school, none of whom ever knew the identity of their benefactor. Also found in his papers was evidence of a previously unknown reconciliation with Black Sabbath's Tony Iommi. While their professional relationship had been restored through the Heaven and Hell project in the 2000s, letters from Dio's final months showed a more personal healing. In one particularly moving exchange from February 2010, just months before his death, Dio wrote to Iommi, "Time has a way of burning away what doesn't matter. The disputes over credits and contracts seem so trivial now. What remains is the music we created together, and for that collaboration, I am grateful." Among his final papers was an unfinished letter to his fans, apparently intended to be released after his death. In it, Dio reflected on his career and the meaning of his music. "I never sang about darkness to glorify it, but to show that it could be faced and overcome. The dragons in my songs could be defeated, the demons could be named and therefore mastered. If my music helped anyone find strength in themselves, then my life had purpose." Wendy Dio, Ronnie's widow and longtime manager, has carefully controlled access to his estate since his death in 2010. When asked about these revelations, she acknowledged that Ronnie was more complex than his public image but disputed some characterizations. Ronnie was a private person with many interests, some of which might surprise people who only knew his stage persona. But at his core, he was authentic. The same person on stage as off, passionate about his art, and deeply committed to his fans. When asked about the disputed writing credits for Black Sabbath material, Tony Iommi issued a carefully worded statement. Ronnie was a brilliant musician and lyricist who brought new life to Sabbath when we needed it most. The creative process is always collaborative and complex. Individual contributions can be viewed differently depending on perspective. What matters is that together, we created music that has stood the test of time. For metal historians and musicologists, the contents of Dio's estate have prompted a re-evaluation of his influence on the genre. Beyond his vocal prowess and theatrical performances, his intellectual approach to music and deliberate mythological framework now appear more significant than previously understood. As one music scholar noted, Dio wasn't just performing metal. He was constructing an entire aesthetic and philosophical system that continues to influence how heavy metal approaches storytelling and imagery. The most tangible outcome of these discoveries has been the release of previously unheard music. Wendy Dio has overseen the careful remastering of demo recordings found in the estate, resulting in Dio, The Early Years, and Rainbow to Sabbath, The Transition Tapes. These collections have given fans new insight into Dio's creative process and the evolution of some of his most iconic songs. For devoted fans, the revelations from Dio's estate have only deepened their connection to his music. The knowledge that the fantastical worlds he sang about were deeply meaningful to him, not just stage gimmicks, has added new dimensions to familiar songs. As one fan put it at a recent tribute concert, "Knowing he believed in the power of these symbols makes me listen differently." It wasn't just entertainment for him, it was a worldview. The contents of his estate, now partly shared with the world, tell the story of a man far more complex than his public image suggested. An intellectual deeply interested in ancient knowledge, a businessman sometimes torn between art and commerce, a mentor generous with his wisdom but protective of his legacy, and ultimately, a private person who built a public persona that both revealed and concealed his true self. As metal continues to evolve in the years since his death, Ronnie James Dio's influence remains undeniable. The devil horns raised at concerts worldwide, the fantasy themes that have become a metal staple, and the standard for powerful melodic vocals all trace back to his contributions. The discoveries from his estate have only confirmed what many suspected. Behind the dragons and demons was a thoughtful artist who took his craft and its impact very seriously.